Well, good morning and welcome to this Wednesday, November 9th edition of Keystroke Live. I'm Dave Hunsinger, and today I'll be talking about the end-of-year procedures. I'm going to leave everyone unmuted. If I start hearing background noise, I might mute you out, but I'll just seems okay right now. Keystroke Live every Wednesday, 10 a.m., same login information. This week and next, we're going to be doing a little about end of year. We're going to take Thanksgiving week off, and then the last week of November there, Mike Tabor's going to come in and give some technical tips. So really, there's quite a few things that you can do for a Keystroke end user when the end of the year is here and you need to kind of do some housekeeping, and you don't really have to do anything in Keystroke. That's kind of an old cash register thing. You had to batch it or departmentalize it or dump out the previous year's data. We've got the continuous data, the file splits. So if you don't do anything, Keystroke continues to work. Everything's good. There's nothing required or mandatory. A big popular thing at the end of the year is doing a variance to get your inventory value and inventory totals correct. And next week, Lynn is going to talk in detail on the best ways to do a variance. What goes hand in hand with that is your inventory value. In Keystroke, there's the inventory database report, and that gives you the inventory value. And if I switch over to Keystroke here, let's see if I can figure out what to share. Here is Keystroke. And if I go into the report manager, and I'm going to do inventory database, and typically the form you're going to use is totals with profit, totals with markup, depending on what you're like. You see, when I run this report, I'm just going to click OK. Doesn't ask me for a date range. So this is an inventory value right here, right now. And so it's a good report to run, because if at the end of January you want to say, hey, what was my year end, and I'm doing my taxes now, what was my year end inventory value? If you run it at the end of January, it's going to be the value there at the end of January. Here I get the value of, my cost total is about $16,000 is what I have invested in my inventory. So it's a good report to run at the very end of the year. A similar report is the accounts receivable. So if I do sales receivables, and I can do balance due or do it for all customers if I want to document. But again, it doesn't ask for a date range. This gives me the value of my receivables, about $2,000 as of exactly December 31st. So it's good to run both of these reports because people want to go back and look at them. Another way of doing it, if I go back to my PowerPoint, is I've got it down here, data backup. You can just take a copy of the year-end data, the files in your Keystroke data directory, and copy it to another place on the hard drive or a subdirectory in Keystroke and call it, 12-31-2016, so that if you do ever need to go back and run a report for the year end, all you have to do is start Keystroke with a data switch, so keystroke space /D 12-31-2016 /, and it'll open up those data files, and you can go run those reports or look at quantities on hand for the end of the year. So that's a way of dealing with the inventory value and accounts receivable. Also with accounts receivable, you may want to go in and look at, hey, here's invoices I haven't been paid for a long time. I'm going to write off certain debt, write off certain finance charges. Whether you do that at the end of the year or halfway through the year, it's good to kind of have a time when you do it, because it makes it easy to go back and find those adjustments you made. If you have end users making adjustments every month, sometimes it's hard to say, oh gosh, did I do that in February, March, April, or May of 2016. But if you know, hey, I made all my adjustments in January of 2016, then it's easy to go find those things you made. And remember, when you're doing accounts receivable, what you want to represent is reality. So if they didn't pay you, or they short paid you, or it's 2 cents here or 2 cents there, just make a note of it and say this is why you did it, and then you can track back to see how it happened. Another thing that often happens on January 1st are sales tax rate changes. And I will switch back to Keystroke here just to give you a quick look at how Keystroke deals with this. And let me get rid of the report there. So I'm going to go into the configuration of manager of Keystroke, and I'm going to select tables, tax, and tables. And so I've got my standard state local 8.5% here. State local. I've got a bunch of tax rates in here. I don't need a lot of these, but basically I have my, this is my probably state tax 7.75%, and there's a date range here. It goes on forever. Well, what I can go in and do today, you can do this in November or December, is say, hey, this tax is going to end on 12/31/16. So what this allows Keystroke to know is if you ever edit or go back and view any invoice in 2016, it knows the tax rate was 7.75%. And I'm just going to say OK there. And then I'm just going to hit Insert or F2. I'm going to add a new one for code taxable. And it's going up to, let's say, 8%. And it's going to start on 1/1/17 and go on basically forever there. So now Keystroke knows it was 7.75% before January 1st, 2017, and it's 8% after. And that's how Keystroke works, and you kind of daisy chain it along so it knows what all the tax rates are. So you could go out today if you know there's going to be a tax rate change on January 1st. You can get it ready to go, and it'll just happen automatically, and you don't have to think about it or be there at 6 o'clock in the morning on New Year's Day to change it. So, and I've got that ready to go. You see here, 12/31/16, 7.75% ends, and I actually I had a tax rate change here in 2014, but here's my, it starts 1/1/17 as 8%. So it kind of daisy chains along, if you get the idea of that. If you just go in and change the tax rate, then everything in 2016 will want to collect that tax amount as well. So that is, and I'm going to switch back here to my PowerPoint. That's the sales tax rate. There's also database management. If you use fields like total purchases on customers or on inventory, total sold, total purchased, some people like to reset those in January so that those fields become year-to-date totals, not over all of time totals. Some people just leave them there and are fine with that, and that's great to do too. It's just something to think about. You can also, in that database maintenance, there's hiding and showing records. It's like, gosh, let's hide items we didn't sell in 2016 just so we're not stumbling over them all the time. The beauty of the hiding is that you don't see it in your day-to-day operations, but you can include it in reports if you're running a report for the last 10 years or whatever. So it's a handy way of kind of pushing those aside so you don't see them in lookup lists and things like that. Also on here I have data backup. I talked about putting it the keystroke data in an alternate directory so that you can jump in and easily see where you were on December 31st. It's also a good time just to evaluate backup procedures, how they're doing them, if they're using an online backup like Carbonite, if they're, I'm a backup junkie. I have batch files that run, so I've got an exact copy of Keystroke for the last 7 days. It rotates around so that I have like directories, and I just call them 1 through 7. So 7 was 7 days ago, 1 was 1 day ago. And so I can always go back and, we do a lot of testing and say, hey, there was a problem, that we discovered in a build we started using 2 days ago. I can go back and get 3 days ago data if I need to. So I do that. I do backups of like entire hard drives to USB hard drives. I do backups to DVDs and maybe take one home and put it there just in case something happens to the building. Online backups. So there's a lot of different ways of doing it, but it's good to have a procedure. It's good for it to be a kind of brainless for merchants so they can not have to worry about executing. And then the other very important thing about backing up is making sure you can restore your backup, because we've talked to people that, oh, this is backing up, and they go to get it and they can't unzip it, or it's not getting the right information, or it's been erroring out early in the backup a lot of times. So it's a good time to evaluate that not only are you able to back up the data, you're able to restore the data as well. I also would be remiss to not mention it's a good time to see, hey, what keystroke version are you in? Do you need to update Keystroke? With I have PCI and security. With all the new PCI stuff, it's a good time to evaluate where they are with Keystroke, if they need to update. We are making changes, obviously in 8 with our PA DSS validation through the PCI SSC, Security Standard Council. We've made a lot of improvements with passwords, with how data is stored. So there's a lot that helps with PCI compliance in the more recent versions of Keystroke. It's a good thing to look at and review. Remember, yeah, PCI is a lot of hoops to jump through, and I don't know how pertinent it is to a lot of small merchants, but the PCI and security is a good thing to do. If a merchant sees if employees working for a merchant see that business owner in there concerned about security, they're calling in the consultant, they're updating stuff, it's going to make them a lot less likely to think they can get away with taking money out of the till or scamming on selling expensive items cheap or things like that. That if they know there's some fences up, that'll kind of keep them corralled, so to speak. So good to review PCI and security. Good to update Keystroke. If they're not on a maintenance plan, it's a good time to get them on a maintenance plan right at that cusp of the year. It's either they want to use up money for the 2016, or sometimes right there in 2017, new money opens up so that they can do some spending. So good time to sell them Keystroke software maintenance and your services. I also have update other software, and whether that's virus software, backup software, there's a lot of things in there. A really important one now is operating system. Windows XP was sunsetted in 2014. Still works and all, but with a lot of changes we're making in Keystroke, there are stumbling blocks in Windows XP. So in a future release, probably in the coming months, Keystroke will not install on Windows XP anymore, especially as we go more and more to the .NET framework. I think it's 4.0 works on XP, but when you get into 4.1 or 4.5 that we're using with a lot of the with a lot of the .NET programs we're using, which is license ID right now, and KeyPay and Keymail. We're working on the new report engine that will be, .NET 2. .NET as well, but it uses the 4.2 and 4.5 that you can't necessarily get on Windows XP. So just something else to prepare your customers for. Hey, you're going to need to go to that operating system, or they've got Windows XP computers. They're probably getting close to 10, 15 years old, and it may be good to update hardware, software. It's a good time to evaluate that. Also a good time to look at payment processing, because if they're not using EMV, it could be a good time to introduce the idea, get them thinking about the EMV. It's really, I went to a PCI community meeting in September and to learn more about what they're doing, and they're saying fraud is up like 30 or 40% since EMV was introduced, mostly due to friendly fraud. People using a chip card, seeing that the merchant doesn't have a chip reader, and then calling their credit card company and saying, hey, that was a fraudulent charge. And if it wasn't read with a chip, they just say, hey, take it away. Now, they also say, oh, well, the fraud is up 40% because credit card use is up 30%, things like that. But it's still, it hasn't curtailed at all. It's introduced some new ways of doing it. And they say fraud is up too because a lot of the fraudsters are exploiting vulnerabilities before people upgrade to EMV. So they're working really hard right now to use stolen card numbers that they have so that they can use them before everybody upgrades to EMV. So they say, the criminals are working harder, which is why fraud is up as well. So good time to look at that. Cayenne's got a great option with the Genius. It's good interface. You can do the line item display. It's good customer experience. Sometime in December, we're getting the Genius handheld wireless Genius device that will probably be available right at the beginning of next year. So that they're working on that. They're doing a lot of good things. Vantiv as well is working on some new devices other than the VX805 and the ISC250. The VX805 has been very good and dependable. The ISC250, there's been some bumps. We're working them out as we go along, and Mike Tabor will have more of that on when he does Keystroke Live at the end of the month. So we are making improvements there. I think we found a few things that make a big difference. So good reason to keep Keystroke up to date and to get people on the integrated payment processing. I also just wanted to, here I've got it, wanted to bring up, we do have a few documents that you can just call in and request if you need to, year-end procedures, how to do a variance, and how to make a tax rate change. So you don't have to remember exactly how to do it. We've got these PDFs we can easily send to you. So if you want to go over them with your customer or keep them so that you can refer to them each year where you're doing year-end stuff, we've got these available as well. With that, I will open it up to any questions you might have. Hopefully I haven't been talking to myself for 20 minutes here, but...
No, we can still hear you.
Okay.
Well, you're here. I hear you.
All right. Well, hey, thank you very much for coming to Keystroke Live. Remember, next week we're going to have Lynn speaking about variance, so how to change your quantities on hand to accurately reflect them. I always like saying, my rule of thumb is good information is better than bad information. So Lynn is going to come next week and talk to you about good information. Thanks for coming. Have a great Wednesday.